Hi everyone, here's what's bothering me today. Sir John A. MacDonald. He is in the news here in Canada because some protesters in Montreal tore down his statue. And so all of Canada's in a tizzy because he was our first prime minister and so important and helped found the country of Canada. Now, here's the thing, right? While you can't judge people from history by the standards of today without it being a little unfair, it's important to remember that John A. MacDonald is a very complicated and overall not good figure in Canadian history. Yes, he's important and has to be mentioned in terms of, yeah, he was our first prime minister, but he wasn't the father of the nation as many people seem to think he is. But I want to really hammer home the point of, oh, we shouldn't judge him by the standards of today. By his own standards, back in the 1860s, the man was extreme in his views. So not only was he staunchly racist and a white supremacist, he thought that there was no way of having the Chinese ever fully integrate. Like he was literally afraid that the Chinese would mix with indigenous and white people on the West Coast to create and I'm not joking here, a mongrel race that will have no loyalty to Britain or any of the Aryan character that remains. And this is part of why he had the Exclusionary Act signed in the late 1800s, specifically targeting Chinese people. This is where we also get a lot of the head tax things from. The man is also largely responsible for the residential school system, whose terrible legacy we are still dealing with in Canada today. And he also has some pretty damning quotes. So, in fact, let's just take a look at some of what our, great first leader had to say about some people and some things. I have reason to believe that the agents as a whole are doing all they can by refusing food until the Indians are on the verge of starvation to reduce the expense. So, yeah, he had agents in the prairies deliberately withhold food from starving Indian bands in order to forcibly relocate them onto squalid reserves, which again are federal land, not native land, so that they could be overseen by dictatorial Indian, Department of Indian Affairs agents, or by the RCMP. And this would also lead to the pass system. Let's see, there's also some more lovely quotes from this guy. The Aryan races will not wholesomely amalgamate with the Africans or the Asiatics. The cross of those races, like the cross of the dog and the fox, is not successful. It cannot be, and never will be. So, yeah, that's a thing. Oh, here's one of my absolute favorites. We must protect the rights of minorities, and the rich are always fewer in number than the poor. You still like this guy? This man should not be celebrated. And you're not losing history when you tear down statues. What you're doing is you're deciding consciously as a society to no longer celebrate the worst among you. Yes, historic figures are complicated. So no matter what, John A. MacDonald is going to be cemented in Canadian history as the man who was the first Prime Minister of the self-governing Dominion of Canada under the British Empire in 1867. But it's very important to remember that he was not the only one, and he also wasn't the architect of that project. The fathers of responsible government were Louis Hippolyte Lafontaine and Robert Baldwin. The other founding fathers, the fathers of Confederation, when you see the portrait, there's like 25 of them. And there's, generally speaking, to me anyway, 4 who stand tallest among them. Yes, you have Sir John A. Macdonald, then you also have Sir George Etienne Cartier, then you have George Brown, and you also have Thomas D'Arcy McGee. There were other people from the Maritimes who, again, were largely the ones who got the project rolling. The Maritimes originally wanted to unify the colonies of Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia into a self-governing dominion. John A. Macdonald takes what was at that point the United Provinces of Canada, which was this just completely unholy, blasphemous union of Ontario and Quebec that required a double majority to get anything done. And he just showed up to this Maritime Union conference and said, hey, could the province of Canada maybe get in on this deal? He's a shyster. He's not some visionary. He's an opportunist. And again, when you think of the fact that he wanted to secure half of the continent for the British Empire, it was not because he really believed in the idea of a Canadian enterprise. He believed in the supremacy of the Aryan race and wanted to secure a home for it on the North American continent under the British Empire, whose ideals of imperialism and racial and religious superiority he held to be very deep. That's why it's really bad to think of him as this kind of George Washington-esque figure in our history when he's not. Yes, he's important, but that doesn't mean he should be celebrated. And so when he was taken off the $10 bill and replaced with Viola Desmond, that was great. I love that. And I'm hoping that with some of these other quotes that I have provided here, as well as some other sources showing just how terrible the man was in terms of how racist, even by the standards of his day, he was, how Canada was not some vision he believed in, but rather an opportunity built out of fear and wanting racial superiority, which will also explain a lot of our early government actions. And I'm hoping this brings a new light on Sir John A. Macdonald for a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't have known it. Because the man is not good. He should not be celebrated. The loss of his statue doesn't erase him from history. And the fact that there are so many people who are defending this man as if he was some kind of great leader, this kind of grand visionary, is a false narrative. And so the people who claim that this is about history, it's clear that they don't even know it themselves. And that, really, at the end of the day, is what's bothering me today.